Our top focus today. The United Nations Security Council has listed Pakistan-based terrorist Abdul Rehman Makki as a global terrorist. The listing comes after China last year stalled India's bid to name the Laskar-e-Taiba leader as a global terrorist. Earlier, China had stalled India's bid to list Masood Azhar as a global terrorist at least 4 times in the last 10 years. The United Nations had finally designated Azhar as a global terrorist in 2019. And now the latest listing comes after a gap of 3 years and 8 months. China has finally removed its hold on the listing of the Pakistani-based terrorists. Reports suggest that China may have come under international pressure to list Makki as a global terrorist. India and the United States of America have already listed Makki as a terrorist under their domestic laws. Makki has been involved in raising funds, recruiting and radicalizing youth to violence, and also planning attacks in India, especially in India's Jammu and Kashmir. Makki is also the deputy chief of the Laskar-e-Taiba and leads the political affairs department of the terrorist group. He's the brother-in-law of Hafiz Saeed, the founder of Laskar-e-Taiba. Makki also served as the lead or the head of the LET's foreign relations department. The Pakistani government had arrested Makki back in 2019, after which he was convicted in 2020 on 1 count of terrorism financing and was sentenced to prison. However, despite these actions, the terror group remains active in Pakistan and continues to disturb peace and stability in the Indian Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. The United States has become one of the first countries to react to the listing. Speaking to WION World is One, a US embassy spokesperson has said that Washington designated Abdul Rehman Makki as a global terrorist in 2010, and the US government now welcomes all efforts to bring him to justice. India, along with the US, had jointly proposed Makki's listing in 2022. Now, for more analysis on this story, we are now being joined by Syed Akbaruddin, who is India's former permanent representative to the United Nations. His work at the United Nations against terrorism, climate change and towards international peace has been significant. He has been credited for blacklisting of the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar as a global terrorist. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One.
Thank you very much.
Given your expertise and views on the matter, how do you view this UN listing? Is it a clear sign that China may have come under international pressure to list Makki as a global terrorist?
So, countering terrorism has been one of India's main planks at the UN. It is because that terrorism impacts on ordinary people. And so, anything that happens to our large population is a major issue for us from a foreign policy perspective. That said, countering terrorism for about 2 decades is a primary focus. We've tried many ways and many attempts have been made. That this attempt has succeeded in less than a year is creditable because obviously, the pace at which we are able to gain support from the international community for our efforts has quickened. It took me 10 years to ensure that Masood Azhar was listed, but It's taken less than 7 months this time. So obviously, we have greater international support. China is under greater pressure, and its ability to thwart us has been weakened.
Absolutely. Sir, you've also been very vocal about China's attempts to block India's efforts to fight global terror. This listing, is it a sign of China's diminishing influence at a global stage?
Yes, terrorism is one of the most egregious acts against ordinary people, and therefore it finds very little support in the international community. That India has been able to harness everybody else in pursuit of its quest for justice is clearly a sign that China is now backing off.
This also begs the question, could there be other names in the pipeline to finally be designated as terrorists?
Yes, the pipeline is pretty long. We have on that in that pipeline others. For example, Abdul Rauf Asgar, who was involved in the IC-814 hijacking. We also have Sajid Mir, who was involved in the Mumbai killings. So the list is long, the quest is continuing, and I'm certain this effort will, of course, speed up that long list. The Pakistani system has produced a large number of these, and it behoves all of us to pursue this and meet the ends of justice.
Absolutely. Just a final question there. India is clearly putting pressure, successfully so, at global platforms to be accountable and to list these terrorists as so. Will China continue to aid Pakistan by blocking India's efforts to get these terror groups listed, in your view?
So it must be a case of once bitten, twice shy. China has been pushed twice, and twice they've backed off. Ultimately, it's only the amount of pressure that we can mount that will enable us to push China to back off. So we need to be consistent in our pressure. We need to continue to push forth our agenda, and we need the support of all our partners. If we follow all these three things, I'm certain China will continue to back off.
Thank you so much for all those views, and thanks for being frank. Thanks for joining me on WION this hour. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.